Hey everybody, welcome back to It's Only Embarrassing If You're Embarrassed podcast. For all of my office fans out there, I'm wearing my Shroot Farm shirt. I got this baby at Target for like $10. So if you're a big office fan, they have lots of fun office apparel at Target. So thank you guys for tuning into this Mental Health Monday episode. This episode has been on my mind to do for Mental Health Monday for a little while now, but I've been putting it off because this episode I wanted to talk about grief, and who wants to talk about grief? Not me. But I'm going to, because I feel like grief is something that pretty much everybody struggles with at some point in their life, and something that I feel like isn't really talked about, isn't really normalized. And so really I just wanted to share with you guys the journey that I've been through with grief over the past couple years, how I have navigated grief, the good, the bad, and the unhealthy, and how I am learning to navigate grief now. So to give a little bit of a backstory, my father passed away about 2.5 years ago. And so my dad in May of 2020 was diagnosed with cancer for the third time. And so he went through chemo, radiation, all of that from May until about November. And then in November, we got the good news that was it looked like the chemo and the radiation was working. And then the next week, we all got COVID. And if you have been undergoing treatment for lung cancer and you get COVID, you obviously are in that high risk category there. And so whenever that happened, my dad had COVID for just a few days before he had to go to the ER. And then whenever he went to the ER, they pretty immediately put him in ICU. And then they actually had to sedate him and put him on a ventilator. And he was on a ventilator for, 3 or 4 weeks before he passed away. And the process of him dying was excruciating, but the process leading up to was so painful and so hard to watch. So as I mentioned, it was the third time my dad had cancer. He's had cancer several times. He also had to have open heart surgery a couple years prior. So he had been through a lot physically. And then once he got COVID, obviously, his lungs just couldn't keep going and turned into double pneumonia. So they had to sedate him and put him on a ventilator. The first night they did that, he almost died because I can't remember if his blood pressure went too high or too low, whichever one it is that causes you to almost immediately die. That happened. He made it through the first night. And then the next 3 to 4 weeks, it was just complication after complication. This was really early in the COVID time, so we weren't allowed to go see him. There was one time that we got to Zoom him, basically he's sedated on a ventilator laying there, and the nurse is in hazmat gear, and we're just on there on Zoom, hey dad, you can't fucking hear us, but we're here. Which I think is just something they do to try to maybe let you say goodbye sort of deal, make it better. I don't know. It's a nice gesture, but it's pretty fucked up. So, and since this time, this was when COVID was really bad. So we got my mom got 2 calls a day, basically saying he's alive, or if there was a change of status, they would call outside of the 2 times a day. So during this 3 or 4 week period of we can't communicate with him, we can't see him, there's literally waiting for my mom to get her 2 phone calls a day to figure out if he's still alive. It was such a just horribly debilitating situation. And so I have really always struggled with anxiety, and going through this, I have never experienced such excruciating anxiety. And so then after my dad ended up passing, it was I still had that same level of anxiety, even though the event had passed. My body could not register we don't have to be this anxious anymore, because I had been that anxious for so long. And so I ended up having to I'd gone to therapy for anxiety probably in my early 20s, but I ended up going to see a grief therapist, and I ended up seeing a psychiatrist, getting on anxiety medication. Then I just really struggled. I really struggled to deal with the kind of reality of what happened and how it all unfolded, and then whenever my dad passed away, I think that was probably like kind of like the nail in the coffin of my unraveling marriage. And then I just sunk into this like super deep depression, developed a super bad drinking problem, like all these things, right? And so in this time, it really, really impacted my mental health because there were so many things that came up that were triggers for me. Like I remember like the first December my dad died. So my dad died December 11th, 2020. So I remember December 2021 was terrible. I think it was probably actually the first time that I actually got on anxiety meds and antidepressants because so it was like the first anniversary of my dad's death. It was the like Christmas time. It was like the first Christmas that I hadn't been with my ex-husband in 10 years. Like it was just so many like changes and things, and it was just so hard for me. And so it took me a really, really long time to not just be like angry and resentful that this had happened, and instead just to like learn to like be thankful for the like almost 30 years that I did have with him. And so in my journey with grief, I've learned a lot, but most of what I've learned is to heal and feel and get a therapist if that's what you need to do, get a support group if that's what you need to do. If it's impacting your life or your mental health in other ways, like definitely seek out those, because I think that anytime you go through something really big like the loss of somebody that you're close to, it really just can send you on a spiral if you don't know how to keep that under control, and if you don't have good coping mechanisms. And in my case, I did not have good coping mechanisms during this time, and so things just were really rough for me for a long time. And so now, so my dad's birthday would have been about a month ago, and you know, it was the first birthday since he passed that I wasn't just miserable the whole day. Like I was almost just kind of like looking at old pictures of us, like thinking of like good memories of us, like really taking like a more positive approach to celebrating his life rather than mourning his death. And I share that one because it took me 2 years plus to get to that point, and because it was a different way of thinking about death and grief and how to honor those anniversary and those times that are always going to come up even after they've passed. And so I wanted to share this episode to share, I guess, just the honesty of what my grief journey's been like, what it has been like, where it is now, and a little bit along the way. So if you guys have been struggling with grief or know somebody who is, please share with, you know, somebody who you think would benefit from just having grief normalized a little bit. If you guys are struggling with grief in a way where it's impacting your mental health, see a therapist, see a psychiatrist. You can do it online, over the phone, teledoc, in person. Like there's so many avenues right now to be able to take care of your mental health. So if you're waiting for somebody to bebop along and say, hey, you take care of your mental health, here's your warning, or your not warning, your permission slip to go take care of your mental health. So thank you guys for tuning into this Mental Health Monday episode. If you guys are new here, Mental Health Monday is an episode I do every Monday where I just share about something different in the world of mental health, whether it be therapy or depression or mental health meds or anything in between. So I hope you guys enjoyed this grief episode. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Thank you guys for tuning in. See you next episode. Happy healing, babes.